introduction, first of all, introduce myself. My name is Sarah Sachs-Eldridge. I'm a member of the Tamil Solidarity Steering Committee. And I also want to explain about why we thought it was important to have this meeting tonight. Because there's many meetings and many events going on. A lot of things are happening at the moment. But we would say to take any struggle forward, that discussion is absolutely vital, absolutely crucial. And that's true of any struggle. But we would say particularly it's true in relation to Sri Lanka. And especially now. And especially given the scale of the massacre that has taken place. Especially given the escalating attacks on democratic rights under this dictatorial regime. And it's, it has got in its sights all of the rights that have been won. You can see that it is attempting to take them out. So the question in this context is, how can the rights be defended? Is that possible? How do we link the defence of those rights with the struggles of the Tamil-speaking people? How do we link it to the question of defending the right to self-determination? Is it possible to do that? So this is some of the things that we want to discuss here at this meeting, which we think is very, very important. And so we've invited, as the speakers for this meeting, key people who have got a record of fighting, of being involved in the campaigns of struggle, people with experience, and I'll explain who our top table speakers are this evening. But I'll also say that, people have taken the time to come here this evening. We want to hear from everybody. We want to hear in the discussion, what people have got to say. But I'd also say that we want this meeting particularly to be about what actions we can take. So it's not only about these, provoking thoughts and discussion on these things, but also about activism and about struggle. So we don't have a lot of time. I'm going to introduce now the speakers. I'll just give a little explanation of who they are and then call them one by one. The first speaker that we're going to have this evening is Mani Thane, who is the National Secretary of Tamil Solidarity. And Mani has been involved in the campaign from its inception, and he will say a bit about what we have done and what we think and so on. I'm afraid I've got to give apologies to the meeting from Kevin Courtney, the Assistant General Secretary of the National Union of Teachers. He was extremely keen to come to this meeting this evening, but unfortunately personal issues came up and he wasn't able to make it. But we are not in any way, we're very, very glad, in fact, to have Martin Powell-Davies here, who's from the National Executive of that union. And Martin has taken time out of an extremely busy schedule, because not only are they involved in campaigning, the teachers came out on the 28th of March just a few weeks ago in a fantastic show of opposition to the government here, but also Martin is standing as a candidate for the Trade Unionist and Socialist Coalition in an opposition to the cuts that are raining down on all of us in Britain. Steve Headley, who is the London Transport Organiser for the RMT, another very militant union, is coming to speak, but he has got some childcare issues this evening, so he's going to come and speak and leave again. But we're very glad to have him here this evening. Kirthikan will then speak. Kirthikan is a very hard-working and serious Tamil Solidarity activist, based mostly in Manchester, where he's playing a really leading role in the struggles and the campaigns there, and he'll say a bit about what he's doing and what we're doing. And then our final, I suppose, keynote speaker for this evening, which we're very pleased to have, is Paul Murphy. And many of you will know about Paul Murphy's record in the struggle for the rights of the Tamil-speaking people in Sri Lanka. But I'll just say a little bit about how he's seen by other people, I suppose, because Paul is not popular in some circles like he is with us. For example, when he was aboard a flotilla trying to take aid to Gaza, the IDF, the brutal Israeli Defense Force, arrested him and others in a very violent way, and he was held in prison in Israel for trying to build the very solidarity that we're talking about this evening. But it's not only there, other brutal regimes. I don't know if many of you know about the regime in Kazakhstan, but it is meting out incredible repression to workers trying to defend their rights, especially oil workers, but across the board, pushing through privatisation and brutal measures. And that in Kazakhstan, because of his visits and the solidarity that he has built there with the workers, Paul is known by the government as persona non grata. And then finally, and most pertinent to what we're discussing this evening, having hosted a very important hearing at the European Parliament, where Paul is an MEP, about the aftermath of the war in Sri Lanka. It was agreed that there would be an independent international investigation into the war crimes, and that the GUI group would send a fact-finding mission as part of that. And the Sri Lankan government has denied Paul a visa to go and do that, and it's in the context of other MEPs being given the visa. So we can see that he has made enemies which probably anybody would be proud to have. So that's my way of introduction. I'm now going to briefly, I'm afraid, Paul.
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah. Okay, I think it's been a really good, interesting discussion, educational for me. I mean, you really can't have enough discussion about these questions, and so it is the start rather than the end of it, and we need to have more and more discussions like this, because I think we could go further on each of the various questions that have been raised. A number of the points kind of relate to what can I do in the Parliament on a range of issues, deportations, the question of international recognition, etc. 2 points on that. One, I mean, there is a limitation to what we can get through in the European Parliament, precisely because, well, I'm one MEP. The European United Left group has 34 MEPs. The Greens, who generally speaking, most of them will be largely supportive, have 50-something MEPs. And then after that, you're into territory which is more murky. Sometimes people will support it, sometimes they won't. And so it's a battle on each of these issues. The way we will use the Parliament, and absolutely we can do it, and we probably should highlight the question of deportations actually as a platform, use it to make speeches about it, to explain to people what's happening, share it on YouTube, around communities and so on. We can definitely do that. In terms of resolutions of the Parliament, it is more difficult. I mean, because of the pressure that's existed from below, the resolutions, they have improved. They're better now than they used to be. We did, a few months ago, a resolution was passed that was the best resolution that has been passed so far on it, and so it's still very far from our position. So it called for, I think, a UN inquiry, but it did at least call for an inquiry, and we managed to defeat the right wing, including British Tories, who attempted to amend out, to change the meaning totally and to amend it into welcoming the LLRC and congratulating the government and just condemning the Tamils. So there's a battle that we're involved in terms of the Parliament and getting good resolutions passed. But the main point I'm making is that in terms of best assuring, in terms of best assuring an outcome, one, we need to change the makeup of that Parliament and make it actually friendly to ordinary people, as in, have good, decent socialists in there. But two, build pressure from the outside is how we can actually achieve a difference. Secondly, the other question I think is really important to take up is the question of Palestine. And it's not just Palestine as well, it's also, I was reading the minutes of the meeting in Geneva, and where Cuba, which would obviously be seen by people as being on the left and so on, and it is a post-capitalist society, but Cuba was the foremost defender, apart from Sri Lanka, of the regime, and saying we shouldn't interfere with the sovereignty of these people. And that creates confusion, because we're saying that the Tamils should be part of a left-wing and an anti-imperialist struggle that are precisely the struggles that the Palestinian people, the Venezuelan people, the Cuban people are supposed to be engaged in. And it shows a real problem in terms of the leadership of those countries, because it isn't just the Tamils who've been let down in terms of leadership, including people who are on the left. It's people all around the world. Abbas he's not a friend of the Tamil people, but he's not even a friend of the Palestinian people, to be honest. He's a friend of imperialism, and he works with imperialism in Israel-Palestine. and you know what I mean, he doesn't have a record of actually fighting on behalf of ordinary people, and it does raise a real problem in terms of the leaderships in Venezuela and Cuba and so on, and the need for us on the left to counter the arguments that they make, to demonstrate how these aren't anti-imperialist regimes, Rajapaksa and so on, and what they're doing. Just the last point then, because I know I'm out of time, is it's that point about campaigning. So it's discussion and campaigning is what needs to happen. And the idea, I think, that was raised about the Olympics seems to me to be a very, very good idea, that when the eyes of the world are on here, I can imagine stunts that capture media publicity and raise the question could be very, very important, but also actually discussing with people, engaging with people, because there'll be a lot of people around to discuss with. That's extremely important work. Thanks a lot.